the other side of it. You have to form community, you have to bond together, otherwise you're not going to survive. So when you look around, you're going to meet all kinds of community people, all kinds of 4037s. They're glue. That's what one of my first personal keynotes for the 4037. Glue. They just glue things together, is what they do. They glue people together, they glue communities together. They're sticky, gluey. And the gods say, let's have glue. So, a lot of it. So we got a lot of glue and we got a lot of busy. The final thing in that is that you have the 4323. You've got this freak mind. This mind that says, I know. So you got all these gluey, busy know-it-alls. That's humanity. Well, it's true. That's humanity. That's the basic stuff that makes us human creatures. And when you see that, and you don't get the joke, you got a problem, eh? I mean, it's just a pattern. Don't get upset. And because there's more of them than anybody else, this is what we live out. Okay, so you have a 4323 mind. What does that actually mean? First of all, remember everything about the individual process is acoustic in its nature. And when you're dealing with the 4323, particularly in this case I'm talking about the 43 because it's the conceptual gate, is that what you're dealing with is a very noisy mind. Now when I say that doesn't necessarily mean that's bad. However, it does mean that it's constantly occupied in its acoustic realm. In other words, that noise is always going on, and it can be anything. It can be background melody, it can be conversations, it can be inner conversations, it can be all kinds of dialogues, monologues. You can imagine that. The whole acoustic realm of mind is in the 43. You see, there's something very unusual about the way the 43 works. Mystically, I call that the inner ear. Now, most of that's a joke, so don't get too serious with that. However, what it really represents is that it can hear what is not a sound. See, that's the bizarre thing about the 43rd gate. What you experience as a 4323 being, as an acoustic phenomena within your head, is not a measurable sound. It's not. It's not like you could stick a microphone into somebody's ear and pick all that up. It's not something that it's hearing. So in a way, it's very magical. So what happens in that 43 mind is that all of a sudden, what it does is that in the moment, in the pulse, it hears its knowing.